Yo, you guys want to talk about Tucker and Ben really quick? I thought this might be a little interesting, okay? So listen to this. Ever since the war between Israel and Gazans started, Ben Shapiro has been covering it basically nonstop. He does almost daily live streams about it, going over everything bad Gazans have done and justifying every single life lost in the Gaza Strip. That's his number one thing. And also advocating for the Biden administration to be giving more weapons, more tools to continue the war into perpetuity until they feel like it's over, without saying that a number of lives lost matters, because he doesn't believe a number of lives lost matters. No amount of money spent matters. Israel should just wipe the place off the face of the earth. That's just his goal. With that said, Tucker Carlson has a different view, not one that I would necessarily say is better. It's fueled by a lot of really bad ideas, but broken clock and right every once in a while and whatnot, right on very specific things. Tucker Carlson recently had a whole show with Vivek Ramaswamy. That guy put himself as minority Trump light, who also wants to bomb Mexico and is kind of like the Gen Z cool kids Republican dictator. That guy who's also completely fumbled and crashed in the polls and is not going to recover his campaign, period, right? But it's still claiming he's going to win Iowa. He recently had him on to basically talk about how both of them don't believe that the U.S. should be helping for him and that it's Israel's problem. They should deal with it. We shouldn't be giving any money or resources or anything to Israel, because every dollar spent on the Iron Dome or anything in Israel is a dollar taken from the mouth of an Appalachian coal worker who has black lung for a government program that they don't believe should exist. That being said, that's where Ben Shapiro steps in. After his mini war with Candace Owens and basically claiming that Candace should leave the Daily Wire if she believes that supporting Israel is anti her Christian values, attacking basically everybody who doesn't believe that we should let Israel nuke Gaza, almost literally. He's now turned his sights onto Tucker Carlson specifically for some of these instances, all right, some of it, and the back and forth that's happening, because I just think it's so incredibly interesting. And Tucker Carlson recently went just full, I'm not even gonna say burn bridge, burn mansion, all right, on this type. He burned down his plantation, his own plantation, the one that him and Ben shared, because he went after him, and it's super interesting.
Well, folks, Tucker Carlson is a really interesting guy. He has some interesting takes on economics as well. He and I have had discussions about those in the past. He did an interview with Glenn Greenwald recently where he started attacking what he called libertarian economics. Tucker and I did this really interesting interview a couple of years ago now, probably longer than that, maybe 5 years ago now, where we talked about the role of the government in the economy. And Tucker has a significantly more socialistic view of the economy than I do. Just blatantly, he has endorsed, for example, many of the plans of Senator Elizabeth Warren. This is not a slander against Tucker. It's something that he will say openly and clearly. Well, he was doing an interview the other day with Glenn Greenwald, who's also been a guest on my program, and they were talking about economics. And Tucker went into this rant about the evils of libertarian economics. And I think this is so short-sighted. I think it's really damaging to the future of American prosperity. And it relies on a bunch of falsehoods with regard to how the world works. Now, I wanted to listen to this because, again, I think this has spillover effects for foreign policy. It assumes that the best policy is going to be protectionist, that high tariffs around America's borders are what's going to make American people wealthier and better off. It assumes that an uninvolved America on the world sphere is somehow going to make American citizens better off. It's all predicated on this notion of economics that ignores the importance of comparative advantage and price structure and all the rest in favor of vaguer concepts like beauty. Now, again, I'm not anti-beauty, but when I need a hamburger, I'm more interested in the hamburger than I am in, the Venus de Milo. In any case, here is Tucker, and then I want to break this down a little bit because it's interesting.
I want to break this down quick because I think it's interesting. So what's really interesting about this is the difference between Ben and Tucker and populism and more being a neocon, all right? Ben Shapiro's is the neocon's neocon, all right? And that's why a lot of people on the right really don't like Ben, outside of him just being Jewish, all right? Because that's like, I would say like 60% of the dislike for Ben on the right there, like is from just straight up anti-Semitism, and the rest of it is for his economic policy and things along those lines. Ben has been somebody who's been really against people like Donald Trump. He never liked Donald Trump that much vocally. It doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, he wants to vote for him and he advocates for him and all this type of stuff. Still, especially over almost every other candidate in the race. But what Ben is more of a sort of like free market, the invisible hand knows best, let the capitalism flow where it might, and that's where the prosperity and everything is going to be happening, right? He's more of one of those types of people who is more pro-immigration. He's not like Walsh or Owens or Knowles or like Tucker or like the people over at Breitbart or like Blaze TV, all of these types of guys, or like the sort of like the Fuentes types who are just straight up like, we need to get all the Browns out of America instantly, or else we're going to collapse, and next thing you know, all churches are going to be replaced with a Jose's taco stand, okay? And that's going to be the end, and then all the Browns are going to come in and vote to kill Whitey. Being white is going to be illegal in 2024. I mean, listen, okay? It's this type of stuff, okay? It's like this. Being white is going to 2019, illegal to be a white nationalist, God willing. 2020, illegal to be pro-white. 2021, illegal to be pro-Western culture. 2022, illegal to be anti-Marxist. The next year, illegal to be Christian. And 2024, a couple hours from right now, everyone, it's going to be illegal to be white. So any Caucasoids in chat, count your days. Your days are numbered, all right? And honestly, it's less, your days aren't even numbered anymore, because it's less than one day. It's over for you. All right, we're getting so close. 3 more days, thank God, when whiteness is going to be completely abolished by the Biden administration. All right, Tucker is more on the lines of like Donald Trump with the faux populism idea of we need to help people, but mostly just like white people, the like stock of this country type thing. Tucker believes in more of the like actually just straight up fascist like ideas of like of like the stock of the nation and the soul of the nation residing in certain people and not other people, and how this needs to be like a Christian nation, and all of these sort of like metaphysical ideas that make things what they are, and why some people aren't allowed to participate in the American system and some people aren't, because just some people aren't built to be able to maintain the system, and that's why brown people in the country and these types of different people and like acceptance and diversity and tolerance and all these types of like more like and all of these types of ideas are specifically anti the white Christian American experiment that he's personally against, that has more to do with like an idea, and Ben has more to do with like money and like what's more physical. Tucker's less physical, and in that he speaks more with like emotion. He's more emotional in that way, and so it's kind of like Ben's whole thing, right? To go against people like Tucker. Not to say like emotion is necessarily bad. Emotions, like feelings, are facts, right? But Ben really likes the sort of cold idea of being emotionless, even though while you're trying to fight for the while you're trying to fight for like logic, emotion's almost always the one at the wheel driving with these types of things. I mean, when it comes to his support of like Israel and a lot of these other things, it's more to do with emotion than it has to do with like actual like what's the best foreign policy for the United States to take on, right? Because he has an investment in Israel and Israel's continuation and Israel's subjugation of Gazans and the historical Palestinian land and that nation's people as a whole, right? I swear I'm only half white, so you're gonna be half gone tomorrow is what you're telling me. You're right, sadly. I left, but I still feel bad for all the people who are there and getting harassed daily. You all having conversations. Well, Ben, you have more objections like that to Carlson, huh? Well, guess what people have to say about you? Right. Ben pretended to be a libertarian and puts on the cloak from time to time when it suits. He's yeah. So I think Ben. Here's the thing. Ben is more liberal than people like Tucker Carlson, and what I mean by that is sort of like capital L liberal type thing, right? Capital L liberal sort of like designation when it comes to like free trade and like free trade and individualism and like the capital will flow where it needs to be, and letting that happen will let the will like bring forth a society that will be the best, and everybody can participate as long as you're smart enough and you have the money or whatever. If you have good ideas, just let that type of stuff roll. Get like government regulations out of everything. As long as we just get more government hands off things, as long as we have people being more individual and more atomized and all that type of stuff, people's true greatness will shine, and that will bring forth a better society, right? But Tucker's more on the end of more, I would say, far closer to like the more fascist end. I mean, like Tucker's even straight just endorsed the idea of fascism, even on when he was on Fox News, when he said that he would be that the left pushing for diversity and inclusion and all this type of stuff is pushing him to be more open to voting for a fascist candidate, right? All of that type of stuff. Tucker's more on that type of side, that he wants the government's hands to be in it, but to be building more of like a society. Surprisingly enough, he likes the like Chinese top-down command control economy than he does like the system that we have now, or Ben Shapiro's system of economy, or like running society. Just making it, just having a government apparatus that is involved in every single point of life, but as specifically to hamper people's rights in some ways, and let through people's rights in other ways, like keeping out brown people, or like forcefully maintaining like a white majority, forcefully maintaining a Christian majority, things along those lines, right? And Ben, obviously, they're all on the spectrum when it comes to a lot of this stuff, but economically speaking, Ben spends more there and Tucker's more there, right? Tucker, you're wrong. So true.
People have awakened to the now demonstrable fact that libertarian economics was a scam perpetrated by the beneficiaries of the economic system that they were defending. So they created this whole intellectual framework.
Okay, pause that for a second. So I don't like this conspiracy theorizing about the nature of libertarian economics. Libertarian economics says the government should not control the free flow of goods and services. That's all libertarian economics says. A free market has property rights for you, and the government can't get involved. That is the opposite of a conspiracy theory. A conspiracy is when a group of powerful people restructure an entire economy around particular interests. So, for example, if you
now stop me if I'm misunderstanding here, but Tucker didn't say conspiracy theory. He said scam, which is different from a conspiracy theory. A scam is something that's sold to you as one thing but turns out to be another thing, which I would say that, yeah, like the ideas of trickle-down economics and individualism and the government not getting involved in the economy, and a mixed economy being bad, and just like give like big banks and big in big companies, big organizations, rich people more and more of our money, and let them filter more and more of the country's wealth into like a smaller and smaller amount of hands. And by the nature of that economic system, the world will be a better place, and you will be better by having like the nation's money funneling into like the richest among us and the ones who have the most among us, right? That's what I would personally call a scam. Yeah. I would say that's a scam. Now, would I call it a conspiracy theory? It depends on how you want to like phrase the word conspiracy here, but I would say that it is one. It depends on what you mean by conspiracy theory necessarily, right? Like, did a bunch of people conspire to be able to make this economic system work for them and not other people? I would imagine if we're going to just talk about things like lobbying, like rich people and lobbyists lobbying with like big companies, to be able to slowly move our economic system to be more beneficial to them, and by virtue less beneficial to your average American, I would say, yeah, probably, yeah. And libertarian economics are pretty bad, right? And I mean, Argentina is going to know about that pretty soon here, right? But yeah, I mean, let's just see what else he has to say about this.
Were to push forward a protectionist policy, that is a policy designed to protect specific people in your country in a particular industry from competition from other people in the country and also elsewhere. That is the goal of it. That's an actual cadre of powerful people shaping the economic system for everyone. A baseline rule, which is that you have freely alienatable goods and services You can alienate your own labor. Someone can pay you for your labor at a given wage. Like that's not a conspiracy. Me giving you the ability to actually trade with other people, I'm confused as to how that would be a conspiracy by me. Now, it may not end to the benefit of people who are less competitive in a particular industry, and there may be very good reasons to protect certain industries. For example, for national security reasons. I think that we should be cutting down on trade from China because I don't think we should be enriching our enemies. That's a different thing from saying that economically speaking, there's this group, and there may be very good reasons to protect certain industries. For example, for national security reasons. I think that we should be cutting down on trade from China because I don't think we should be enriching our enemies. That's a different thing from saying that economically speaking, there's this group, this secret group of libertarian economists who, for their own benefit, like Milton Friedman was sitting in the back room and he's like, I need to be rich. And the only way I'm going to be rich is if there's free market economics. That's just not true. It's just not true. There's a kind of politics that a lot of people are engaged in these days called emotivism. It's a basic philosophy that suggests that the reason your opponents are doing the thing they're doing is because of their own emotions. They're doing it because they're badly motivated, because they want the worst for you. I think it's an ugly way to do politics unless you have actual evidence that that is the case. It's a conspiracy way to do politics. It turns out that some people have ideas that are different from you. Sometimes it is because they're corrupt.
For one, it wouldn't be because like for one, I think just the economists are just wrong. Okay. I think libertarian economists are, for one, simply wrong. And two, playing into the hands of rich people. And three, that's why rich people love libertarian economists. Right? That's what I think's going on there. I think it has a lot less to do with a sort of like, oh, they're rubbing their hands together and like they're necessarily going to benefit. I mean, look at Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand didn't benefit didn't necessarily benefit much from making the world a worse place. From trying to make the world a worse place by advocating for libertarian economics. I mean, she lived her life on by like people who were pushing for mixed economy, for poor, broke, untalented asses like her to be able to still have a place in society because they personally believe that simply just because you don't have a bunch of money and you don't own a bunch of capital doesn't mean that you're an invaluable asset to the world in general, right? So that's why she was able to live and she didn't die way earlier by being a broke ass, right? And on the street. But like, with that being said, I mean, simply because you're advocating for something, right? I mean, it doesn't mean you're feeding into like a bad system.
Intellectual framework to justify the private equity culture that's hollowed out the country. That's my personal view, and I've seen it up close my whole life, so I think it's a fair assessment. I think a smarter way to assess an economic system is by its results. So you can assign whatever name you want to the economic system of the United States. You could call it market capitalism. You could call it a whole host of different things. But I don't think any of that's useful. Those are boring conversations. I think you need to ask, does this economic system produce a lot of dollar stores? And if it does, it's not a system that you want because it degrades people and it makes their lives worse and it increases exponentially the amount of ugliness in your society. And anything that increases ugliness is evil. And it's just let's just start there. So if it's such a good system, why do we have all these dollar stores?
Now, this is the battle between the two dumbest kids on the short bus, all right? Which I think is really fun. This is just incredible. An economic system that is bad is one that has a bunch of dollar stores, a bunch of Dollar Generals. Now, I will say there is probably maybe a singular ounce of truth in there that there's a lot of poor people who are in places like food deserts, who don't have the resources to be able to shop at better places, and so there's this predatory industry out there to give them the worst of the worst products and to just keep them poorer and poorer, and then stop other places that could offer them better by being simply cheaper. And their number one thing that they're worrying about isn't the quality of the products but the price of them, simply because they're poor. I get that. But just saying, oh yeah, the fun conversation is, I mean, I would imagine it's more fun than just normal economics, right? Figuring out which economic system is going to produce the most amount of the least amount of Dollar Generals, I guess. Yeah, Nazi bot concerned over ugly. Yeah, he was like, he's just looking through that like culture critic Twitter account, and they're like, we used to build cathedrals and shit. We used to be Vikings and shit. We used to build a goddamn Notre Dame and shit. But now we're cursed with dollar generals, and they're ugly. So obviously there's a problem with the system. We used to rule the world and shit. We was architects. That's my new favorite thing now. That's my new favorite thing. You know how like conservatives are like, they try and like shit on black people with the we was kangs, right? I personally, when their whole political philosophy is we was cool, we was kings in white society, we was we was rulers of the world and shit. That's their whole thing. We was crusading and shit. We got beat like 8 times by the Muslims and shit. Istanbul used to be ours. We used to ride in hollowed out tree trunks as boats and shit. And now we just riding in our Japanese cars, eating our goddamn Arab food. We had McDonald's and shit. You dumbass, you were not kings, you were serfs. Yeah, a kid with like 23% Russian heritage be like, we was kings. No, you was slaves. That's why you're here. That's why you're here. Okay? All of you are here in America not because you was kings, it was because you were poor. You was slaves. You was serfs. That's what you were. That's why you're here. What are you wanted to escape European culture. That's why you're here. That's why we're having this conversation right now. You wanted to escape Europe. That's why you're here. I'm here because the British starved my ancestors. True. So true.
Okay, that is an amazing statement. Why exactly are dollar stores the root of all evil? So first of all, I should point out at this point that according to Consumer Reports, 88% of Americans shop at dollar stores at least occasionally. My family shops at the dollar store at least occasionally. Almost a third of respondents in the 2021 Consumer Reports survey said they shop at dollar stores more than once a month. This seems like a really elitist attitude. It seems like dollar stores are good. You buy things for $1, or at least you did until Joe Biden took office and inflated the currency.
So true, Biden.
That's like the $5 store.
I hate that guy.
It is good to have products at your disposal for cheaper. This is a good thing. Why are we frowning upon this?
I hate how Biden brought in all this inflation and shit. And definitely not Donald Trump with literally every single policy that he put through. The world was great until Bidenomics came.
It seems to me a much, much worse system is a system that produces no dollar stores. A system that produces more expensive goods and services that force your family to pay more. A system that, for example, relies on guilds and doesn't produce dollar or relies on government. Are bread lines better than dollar stores? Because there are a few choices when it comes to economics. Dollar stores are actually not. Now, then he shifts into this discussion of it increases ugliness. Now, when he talks about ugliness, are we talking about like the physical stature of dollar stores? These are not like gorgeous Gothic edifices. They're not beautiful to look at. Well, obviously that's true. Obviously it's true that dollar stores are not beautiful to look at.
Biden made $1 store to $2 store. Fuck. Your Dollar Tree went to 125 under Trump. That is true. These guys hate capitalism but don't want to admit it. Yeah, they hate a lot of the things capitalism does, but really don't want to admit it at all. They don't want any part of actually criticizing the system that they've spent their entire lives making their brand. Like, they're all like the capitalism guy, except for maybe Tucker. I don't think Tucker was ever really the capitalism guy. Ben Shapiro was always the capitalism guy. Tucker is less of the capitalism guy. Tucker's more of, was always in his feelings. Tucker's always in his feelings, right? I mean, he changed the way he looked because somebody like got like made him like put him in his feelings over wearing a bow tie, right? So Tucker's always been more of like a feelings based guy. Ben's always been like Ben's always been more, as far as I'm concerned, more of like, as far as I know, he was more of like a libertarian. Just let the capitalism do its thing, bro, and we're all gonna be good. right? And I don't know how a dollar store is necessarily better than the government giving you something, right? Or at least offering you something. How is a dollar store necessarily better than that, right? Especially like when there aren't that many dollar stores, it's mostly because people have things that they need. That's what I would probably imagine. Like, I don't think there's anywhere near the same amount of dollar stores in Europe. Now, Europe is poorer than us, right? If you go to your average Euro cuck, they're probably going to be have less things than your average American would. But but also that's not necessarily the best way to view a society, is by like how many things that we have necessarily. So I'll agree with Tucker on that. Like things don't, like the amount of things that we have and how expensive those things are isn't necessarily the best metric for determining whether or not we have a good society. And I don't think that and by that nature is why I don't like the idea of figuring out whether or not we have a good society or bad society by whether or not we have dollar stores or not. I also don't think that's a good way to view a society, right? Despite how happy people are, how easy it is for them to pursue their goals, the pursuit of happiness. I like the Constitution mostly. It's mostly okay. So I think the pursuit of happiness is probably one of the better metrics about whether or not a society is actually functioning correctly. Is businesses, and business is good. Yeah, as long as more businesses are popping up, that means things are good, right?
They look like big box stores. Also, that's one of the reasons you can get the product for cheap at the dollar store. Because if they look like Gothic cathedrals, they'd have to upcharge you on the product in order to pay for the Gothic cathedral-looking place where you're buying your tomatoes. Which would be weird.
They could... For one, Dollar Tree and Dollar General don't got no tomatoes, okay? And if they do, they're like frozen. Maybe he means tomatoes as in like ragu tomato sauce, all right? But the whole reason that food deserts exist is because those Dollar Generals and Dollar Trees aren't actually selling tomatoes, and Ben Shapiro would actually be against the government forcing those places to offer you things like tomatoes that people actually need, that the dollar store doesn't care about actually providing to people. That's the whole reason. I mean, like, I remember there was a whole big thing like a couple years ago about like a bunch of conservatives shitting and pissing their pants about the government forcing Dollar Tree and Dollar General to offer poor people actually fresh produce to help deal with the obesity epidemic. Like, apparently their solution to the obesity epidemic is just tell people they're fat over and over again every single day until they kill themselves or change their ways. And both are like a W for them, because if they kill themselves, there's less fat people, and if they get less fat, there's less fat people. So
there's this kind of break that's happening here where, from an elite perspective, they don't like that it looks bad that there's like an ugly store at the corner of town that makes it possible for you to feed your family. That seems really elitist to me. It also seems to be disconnected from history. If you go to Hungary, which is a country that a lot of people love and has a lot of history to it, and a lot of the architecture there is spectacular. I mean, Budapest is an incredibly beautiful city. I can tell you, because this is the way that it worked in Hungary for hundreds of years. Nobody was running the farmers market from the church. They had like a hut outside. The equivalent of the dollar store in Hungary is not a Gothic cathedral. A Gothic cathedral is a Gothic cathedral. The equivalent of a dollar store in Hungary for hundreds of years was like an outdoor stall in the market that was significantly worse for produce than, for example, a dollar store. Here's the thing about America. America, as always, this is one of the beauties of America. It's the reason why we were a world power. This is one of the reasons we have always been a nascent and then obviously dominant world power. It is because in America, function frequently defeats beauty as a priority.
And yeah, I think I was actually going to make this point, but I'm so glad that he actually made it, because it's actually super important to what we're talking about here. It is true. Great Market Hall. Yeah, for one, those like sort of like Dollar Tree sort of places do exist, and they are much prettier in other places. I mean, like Hungary, like Great Market Hall. You're right, it does exist. Somebody in chat, Will from PA, who's not from Hungary, sent me this, which is 100% true. This is one of these massive buildings that were built specifically to hold smaller booths that people can hop into and just start selling random stuff. And most of the stuff is super cheap, and it looks pretty cool too, right? And there's lots of places with market streets like this. Market streets and market buildings, they're super cool, right? But yes, it is true that here in the United States, the uglification of America is something that we've just loved ever since that we've had it. That the number one thing we care about here is how much money it makes and how much capital it moves, and not necessarily how good it looks or how it benefits like our culture or something, right? That's not really what we worry about. As like after the Like after World War II, the sort of like my people, my culture thing like started to really crop up in Europe, and they started to really love that type of stuff and really start to care more about that type of stuff after they stopped killing each other as much. But here in the United States, we've never really had that. So like the capitalism and making money and all that type of stuff is what we've cared about a lot more than whether or not something is going to like benefit the way things look and things along those lines, right? But also there's a big problem with that I'm not sure that like Ben isn't going to touch on here, which is that something making money doesn't mean that it's good for people. Yes, having more things, and yes, things getting cheaper, and like the capitalism war and whatever, and then like the fight to bring the prices down, and like, right, that's all cool, but that doesn't mean it's good for human beings. It was profitable to own human beings, even though we know that's morally wrong. But it didn't matter because owning human beings made more money than it hurt our soul to be bad people. Same way that it makes a lot of money to put a lot of carbon into the atmosphere, but now this December, at least where I am in Kentucky, we've had not a single inch of snow, even though we've not had a single inch of snow, and in some days it's been fucking 60 degrees, okay? It's very profitable to do a lot of things. It doesn't mean it's right or good. We do need a good, healthy balance of things that are good for people, but also not necessarily profitable, right? And even when we do that, a lot of times we will find out that it is still just the fact that companies are averse to change. Why? It's because they care about making money now, not in the future, now. The whole Fortune 500 companies on the S&P 500, their goal is for the quarter to quarter. Where will our stock go? We want the green line to go up. It doesn't matter if the green line from now, or 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, or 100 years from now. It doesn't matter if human happiness goes up, that line goes up 100 years from now. What matters is how much money or our stock buyback can we do? How much capital is flowing? How many X's can we put at the end of our stock move this quarter? That's what matters to these companies. Term look about what will make money. It's usually not as good for human beings. It's usually not as good for just life as people and on planet Earth, but it's really good for making our capitalism that we have here today, American capitalism. It cares a lot more about the money movement than it does about like the human involvement of that money and the purpose of our money, the purpose of society, the purpose of everything that is for one thing. Do you know what that is? It's to make our life better. Why do we want things to be cheaper, right? But also better? Is it just because we just think that cheaper and better is just good? But because we think that when stuff is cheaper, we can use the money to do other things like make our lives better. And when things are better, then we don't even have to worry about that thing being bad and having to purchase it again. Our lives worrying about other things than besides the things that we have breaking down and like causing us more trouble in the future. It's to make our life better. That's what it's for. But there's a massive incongruity, and that's why socialism is appealing to people, whether or not you're good about even fascism, right? Appeals to other people because it appeals to something more than line go up. It appeals to more of the human condition of people on this planet Earth. And there are bad answers like fascism. There are good answers, in my opinion, like socialism and more in more economic systems of that realm, right? But there's a reason why people are drawn to things and talking about the human condition and like the more ephemeral, less tangible things like how like beauty, right? Like it's a little stupid the way he brought it up, but there's at least a grain. Beauty isn't like the number one thing that we'll look for, but beauty is typically a symptom of something more important, which is caring more than we do care about the money that's actually being moved around, right? And so that's why these people will never really see eye to eye, because Ben just sees the human condition much in this way, because he believes that the human condition will simply become better if more money's flowing. And that's just how it is. Even though there's a cap to how happy you can be when it comes to how much money you have, you will not be as happy. You'll not have a happiness gain $100,000 to your $1 billion as you would from your like $10th to your $10,000th, right? So there has to be we do. I don't think Ben has a cap really for caring too much about that. Seems like it, since he doesn't even believe that climate change is really real. So that's just how it is. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there. If you're enjoying the content, hit the subscribe button. If you don't, It'll make Boo very sad. I know a bunch of you who are watching are not subscribed. Join the frenzy. You won't regret it. Thank you, Boo.